We've never seen this in all of chess history. Two players battling it out and the loser takes a lie detector test, the question chosen by the other one. It's absolute drama. With the black pieces in this game, we've got Mr. Hans Niemann, Daniil Dubov playing white here. It's an 18 game blitz match and this is game 18. Please excuse my voice, I'm kind of dying this week from allergies and sickness and blah blah blah. So we'll dive into the chess and I'll try and keep it brief and just bring you the absolute cinema finish here. So what do we see played? It's d4 from Daniil, knight f6, knight f3, and the best thing about this opening is we get a Catalan, named after a chess playing cat called Alan. Regular subscribers of the channel know this, do consider subscribing if you haven't done already. We now see bishop e7, bishop g2, castles, no king safety fist bump, the guys aren't on the best terms. Now we see takes on c4, it exposes this diagonal, but after queen a4 we see the point, because the pawn is won back, but b5 comes with a tempo on the queen, then you cover the diagonal, and after bishop d2, sneaky move headed here, now we see bishop e4 chasing the queen and c6 played, stops this bishop from coming to the a5 square. e3 is now played, knight bd7, always get your bits out, this one's under fire, and so now it gives itself up for the knight on f3, bishop recaptures, rook c8, c5 on the way, so this knight now backpedals, and after the break occurs we see this queen slide to the e1 square. Very weird, but it sets up this idea, and so Hans fights back with queen b6, kicked, but now it can come to the b8 square. We do see this take on c5, bishop recaptures, and this one just tucks back into bed with the king. Safe as houses, and black now brings the knight into the center. This bishop backs up, and before Daniil can do anything further, it's kicked once more, hits this centralized square, and after a5, queen d1, the rook centralizing, you now need to get away from this gaze. It's very nasty. This queen hits the b3 square, we get takes on d4, centralizing the knight here, and it's looking very level, very drawish, right? Rook fc1, similar pawn structure, but soon we get the most crazy endgame occurring. This queen tucks back to the starting square, knight f6, queen e2, and in just a moment we get an imprecision, because in this position, to hold a balance, knight d5 is the top move. Not too much to say, but Hans Niemann, he expands here with pawn to a4, looks natural to gain the space, but you've weakened this pawn now. Daniil pounces by going f4. Sure, you lift the king's kimono here, bit drafty, but after takes on c1, rook recaptures, this knight now has to stumble back here, and you get the invasion of this rook. The queen's got to disappear, and now when you step back, hit the pawn here, you're also threatening knight c6 to win an exchange. So after the queen moves away, you can still jump, but what to do? You double hit the pawn here, and you hit the rook. Where's it going? Slides to the side, and this pawn now drops off the board after a little bit of tickle first, and now e5 is played. You have to expand, try and expose this king here, and now you can simply win a pawn. It's legitimately fine. Then you can capture on f4 with the rook, but instead we see queen c4 escaping this rook's pin down here. It was uncomfortable. Queen d6 bounces out, king h2, and h5 given the question mark, but it's a great move really, especially in blitz. Rip open that king. Rook b7 now played, although taking apparently best, looks a bit strange to open the king. Now we see Hans take on f4. This one was also playable, but this selected. Queen takes back, and now queen e6 is the top way to go. It's a level, drawish looking move because you're going to win back a pawn, but instead we see queen c5, and it's given the double question marks of doom, because you can now play this really weird move. No one finds this. Queen to b8, right? And the idea is, however you take it, you can distract this knight here, then this one's loose, and white stands a little bit better. You know, the pawn might run one day, maybe the bishop comes at the right moment, I don't know. But this king's slightly in a bind, this one's a tad safer. But not played, no knight b8, Instead, we see the move of queen d4, not as precise as you can see. And now Hans comes up with this exceptional shot here, real tactical prowess. What does he play? He finds the stunner of rook takes on e3. And the idea is you can't take the rook because the queen's x-ray defending it. And if you take on c5, well, we're not going to explore it. It was played in the game. But what if you take here? You know, getting 2 knights for a rook. Well, this is the idea. Black can't take here. You recapture. So takes, queen recaptures. And now this is apparently quite good for black. Seems strange to me, right? You got the 2 minor pieces for the rook. Usually that's quite good. But you can rip open the king, expose it. And even though this white knight bounces around, lands the check, because the white king is so exposed, this bishop actually pinned down. Actually, black is doing quite well here. We'll pause the line at this moment. Black a little better. But okay, after this move of rook takes on e3, we didn't see takes on d7. Daniil now takes on c5 here. We see knight recaptures, spawning the seahorse. The rooks now leave the board with check. King f8, knight c6 bouncing back, and after knight d3 going for the pawn, b3 pushes it. Things get kind of crazy because a3 is played. Bishop f1 hits the knight. It comes to c1 to win this pawn here. This knight jumps back, therefore defends, but watch this. Knight e4, and look where it's headed. How are you defending this one? We see knight c2 counter-attacking on this pawn. Knight d2 played, going for the bishop here, and after bishop c4, you could simply, right, take on c4. This one recaptures, you head for this liquidation. Roughly level game, right? Well, completely level actually. You just have to play precisely with black. Don't let this pawn get away. But what we see in the game after bishop c4 is the incredibly ambitious move from Hans Niemann. He plays knight to b1. So he's actually protecting this, saying, now I want to win this pawn. What are you doing about it? So of course, Daniil pushes with b4, opens up this defense, and this is running fast, very, very dangerous. How are your knights spinning back around? Because now after knight d2, black is completely paralyzed if you find bishop d5. Look at how the bishop sprays in these 2 directions, boxing this guy. You know, you have to start bringing the knight back around and the king, but it gets very dangerous because the pawn runs so fast. What if you go f6? Well, still white stands great. You've got this big monster pass pawn here. The knight's looking clumsy and offside. This one's soon going to drop. Wow, what a position. But bishop d5 missed. Instead, we see knight takes on a3. And it allows Hans to take here and here and here. And we're getting liquidation. 3 on 3. Daniil's got the past one running, but in comes the king, back comes the knight. Is it enough here to distract Hans Niemann, then march in the white king? We're about to find out. You couldn't take that, by the way. The queen goes through, so the knight steps back. In marches the king, and f6. Very important move. Usually a boo-boo. Not a fan of Hans Feingold to play that move. But here, justified. Knight b3 check played, king c6. Another check as the knight centralizes, giving the pawn even, but you've now gained access to the central d5 square. And how dangerous does this look? King's marching in, pawn's going to get mopped up. How do you fight back here? Well, g5, the shot selected, and it's a great move. And you would think something like this, right? Marching the king, maybe the line goes like this, and actually you save the draw here with black by running the king to the corner. This is a well-known draw. You either cause the stalemate or you let the pawn drop in this position here because you can't stay with it and not stalemate the king. So we run back. King d5, pawn g5 played. That's how the game could have standardly proceeded. But Daniil, he finds just an exceptional move on seconds. It really is stunning. He comes up with it here. He picks up the g-pawn and pushes it to g4. What a move. This is known as the pawn cube, aka the pube. I mean, we've not seen a move this epic since Daniil decided to head down his local jungle gym, playground, and start on the old pull-ups, the calisthenics routine. What a guy. Look at the muscles, absolutely shredded. Now, what's the best move to play here? Well, it's actually g takes on h4, the more natural move, because this is how the line can proceed. The pawns run, the knight comes back, and the key thing is you can spin around in time. You know, check is one option, or you could run in the king. Actually, let me show this line, I prefer it. Check, and if the king goes, let me turn on the engine, to e6, you can run back, something like this. King marches in here, but you can give this king the runaround. You know, it can't necessarily get you. You can keep doing this sort of thing. You come back, you come in, lots of clicking here, but it's actually very difficult to trap that knight. You know, it's always got squares to run to, and anytime you try and push, you get something like this, drawn position. So let's run back. This was one way to go, taken on h4, draw, but Hans, what does he do? He plays h takes g4, and it's a huge blunder, because now this pawn runs, and although the knight spins back, king e6, and you can't play the intended move of knight f8 check, because once the king marches in, taking the pawn, how do you then stop this one running away? You know, here's a sample line, knight spins around, king boxes in this guy, falls off the board, you make the queen, that's a one game. Whose move is it? Do this, do this, do this, do this, and the queen's marching through, or the pawn's marching through, making the queen, game over, right? So we come back here, king e6 was played. Instead of knight f8, we see knight e5 here. And now after king takes on f6, how are you stopping the pawn running? Answer is you're not. It's plus 99, whatever that means. We see this one played into f3. Now knight e2, keeping an eye on g3. And it was here on move 68 that Hans made the move of g3 but didn't complete it in time. He loses on time in a lost position, goes down in the match on game 18. Incredible comeback. What does it mean? He now has to do the lie detector test, presumably tomorrow. Dubov's going to choose the question. I believe he also lost a ton of money in this match as well. Like I heard $100,000 talked about, but I'm really not sure about that one. Maybe someone can verify in the comments. But this has been a bad day at the office for Hans Niemann, at least in terms of the result. Incredible match, incredible performance. Sorry about my voice. Thanks for sticking with it. Do have a look at the video on screen if you want some more epic chess, and I hope to see you again soon. Cheers.